Our presentation today to parent partners is to give you some information to help you enhance your lessons for your children. We'd like to share with you some information about how speech and language is developed and help you gain some insight on how you can adjust your lessons for the different levels of children. You have children that are not quite ready for some of the questions you may ask, or not attending to the books as well as you would like, and you're wondering what can you do to engage them more. Then you have your typical developing children with language learning, and they're right on par for 4-year-olds. And then you have children that are very advanced and really ready to read maybe. They know their letters and their sounds, and you're wondering how you can adjust the lessons to meet their needs.
Speech and language are actually two different things. Language is a whole system of words and symbols that people use to communicate meaning. Speech is the sound of language. Each of these areas have some sub-areas, subcategories. Language consists of receptive language, expressive language, and pragmatics. All of those interact and are connected. Linda and I will be talking about each of these areas of language, what you look for when you're thinking about those areas, and some ways that you as parent partners can support a child's development of language. Speech, as I said before, is the sound of language. When you're thinking of speech, you're looking at a child's articulation, their fluency, their rate of speech, their voice quality, and the overall ability to understand what the child is saying. We will also be talking today about rhyming and the hierarchy of development. We will also be talking about rhyming today and the hierarchy of development of rhyming and different ways to present it dependent upon the level that the child is at. We'll be introducing the pacing board and how you may be able to use it in your lesson to help improve a child's speech, maybe their understanding of multisyllable words, and maybe even how to break words apart with using it. Today we'll be showing you some ways to use manipulatives in your lesson to make your lesson more effective and to keep the child more engaged, and also ways to enrich their vocabulary by using those manipulatives.
We want to talk a little bit, what does a normal, typical 4-year-old sound like? So before we look at that, and unlayer that a little bit, I'm going to show you a video. Let's see, put this back here without dropping it. This is a little guy called Luke, and I want you to just kind of listen, and then we'll talk about what we see with Luke, who's a typical language learner at 4 years old. Okay, see here? Okay, let's see here.
What's your name?
Luke.
What's your full name? Your long name.
I just got a small name.
Oh, what is it?
The name is Luke.
How do you spell that?
I just know L.
Oh, do you know any other ones?
No, but I only know my other ones.
Do you know anybody else named Luke?
Well, there's more Lukes at my school, and they're the same, but they don't live at my school. They're the same.
Really?
Hmm?
So all of you are the same?
No, I'm different, and they're the same.
Oh, why are you different?
Because I got different hair. And they both got brown hair.
Oh, how did that happen? Are they twins?
Yeah.
Oh.
But they don't have the same clothes.
Are you friends with those other Lukes?
No.
You're not?
No.
Oh, you don't like those other Lukes?
No.
Why not?
Because I always do this. Why is there more Lukes? there yet. I think he was just sick. And all of us said, "Hi, Luke." "Hi." Dithia said hi. "Hi." And I just said hi. "Hi." Like this. "Hi."
Who is your best friend?
Aditya?
Aditya?
That's my school.
Oh, is she an orphan?
No.
But she lives at your school.
Yeah.
All right, so what we saw here with a typical 4-year-old was really advanced conversational speech. He's using concepts. Brenda's going to talk about concept. He's using sizes, colors, sparkly. I wore a skeleton on my face and it was scary. He's connecting to the speaker. He's answering the questions. He's thinking about how to answer them. In the beginning, when he talked about the two Lukes, he's thinking, wait a minute, but same and different. Same and different is a very complex concept that 4-year-olds begin to understand, and they have. And did you know that 4-year-olds have a vocabulary of 4,000 to 6,000 words? How did they get that vocabulary? I'll talk about that a little later. So a typical 4-year-old has good pragmatics. We'll talk about that later. He's connecting to the speaker. He's making eye contact. He's adding comments. He has inflection. 4-year-olds are so much fun, aren't they? They really, really are. And they're really, a typical language learner does sound very much like Luke. But, as Dr. Marara said, our families don't often have children that come up to the level of Luke. So we have families that we call at risk. And I want to talk a little bit why Spark is so vital to our at-risk families. How many of you are familiar with the research on trauma? Okay, great. Back in the late 90s, there was a study done with thousands of adults, and they had to answer a myriad of questions about their childhood. And they were able statistically to correlate at-risk things that happen to children that would put them at risk as adults for at-risk behavior. So trauma in childhood has a definite correlation, not a cause and effect, but a correlation to risky behavior in adulthood, which means drug use, suicide attempts, unable to keep a job, depression, heart problems, medical issues, diabetes, obesity, all correlated with trauma in childhood. And they've identified about 20 different factors of childhood trauma. Every one of us have probably had 1 or 2 or even 3 of these trauma in their childhood. I certainly have. A death of a family member or a caregiver that you were close with, a family member that's been incarcerated. How many of us have children? Family members are in jail, being raised by foster parents, being transferred from family to family, having a family member that passed away, or being abused as a young child, or witnessing abuse. We all have these at-risk, these children that have experienced trauma, which puts them at risk. Now, what you do is build resilience, which can mitigate all these at-risk factors. A relationship that Dr. Marara talked about with our families, a trusting adult relationship, can mitigate and build resilience in these children. Another factor that's coming to light that wasn't in the original study, but is definitely correlated, is poverty. How many of us work with families below the poverty level? Yes, yes. Poverty takes its toll on families. I have a child now that I just consulted on who has 2 hearing aids, binaural hearing aids, has a sensory neural loss. Mother has relatively young, has 5 children, and was homeless. And she told me her little guy just got in school because she didn't have the energy or the wherewithal to really pay much attention to him up to this point. Now, because of Spark, he's connected, he's in school, he's starting to learn speech and language, he has a stable housing environment. her whole life for this little boy will shift and change around. Families in poverty cannot pay attention to their children. You know that. They are living day to day, just trying to make it to the next paycheck. These children go up in homes where you may not have books. They don't have a literacy-rich environment. They have not ever even seen a cow or a horse, much less talk about it in a book. How many of your children have ever been to a zoo or ever been to a farm or even been to a carnival or actually a fire station? I mean, they know what a fire truck is and they see the firemen, woo, 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 but do they really own that concept? So poverty plays a great factor in at-risk language development for children and their language development. So we're going to help you with that today, of how you can enhance their language and have more concrete hands-on experiences with them as you do your Spark lessons.